Right, good evening, everybody. This is CAD 214 MEP on January 31st. Today in class, we're going to be reviewing the mechanical file that I asked you to review earlier in the semester. We're going to talk about the MEP Revit overview and how the project browser differs in MEP. And then we're also going to talk about calculations. As we had mentioned before, the first half of the semester is going to be dedicated strictly to HVAC systems. It's a little bit more involved than some of our plumbing and electrical systems, which are easier to get through. And we'll tackle that in the second half of the semester. Then for final project, we'll do a entirely new project that will combine all three disciplines. So for today, we'll go ahead and jump into the review of the mechanical file that I asked you to look at. So we go ahead and open that up here. There's a couple of things that I just want to touch base on. If you read through that, you'll notice that there's a lot of information in here, and there's a lot of information that goes into HVAC systems. We're really just kind of hitting the top part of it, just kind of scraping the top when it comes to information. If you really kind of dig down into this, there's so much information that's involved in creating your calculations for your HVAC load, which we'll talk a little bit about, and then your ductwork, and then how that translates into the real world. There's many different options, and we're just going to hit one in particular. Each semester, I try and find an easier calculation for students. But if you just do a regular Google search, you'll notice there's a bunch of different ways to come up with the same thing. I think I found the one that's correct. Most correct. I've talked to a couple of AC guys, and so I think the one that we're going to go over today should be the most user-friendly for you. And as they say, the biggest rule of thumb for this calculating HVAC load. So let's just breeze through here a little bit and see what I'll just kind of pull out the main points. If you looked at this, it's a very basic duct system. Where this is for residential, some of the information will be given you will be residential information, and some, but we'll be starting with commercial property to start. You can see here some very basic premise that we have the inflow unit, the return grill where the return air comes. This is where we put our AC filter to filter that air. It comes up through the air handler, it goes over the coils, and it gets resupplied through here. So it's a very circular system. And if you did get a chance to read through all this stuff, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of different types of air conditioning loops, HVAC systems. We're not going to need to know the difference between all of those because, quite frankly, I don't understand it all. But I want you to have an idea of the vast variety that are out there and the different types that you can get. So we're going to start here with our supply distribution. This is another version of what we looked at before. This is basically what we're going to be laying out in Revit, basically with our central air handler, our return air. We're going to be laying out our ducts, and then our diffusers or our vents, and then an outdoor air inlet, pretty much with a plenum return. When we create our plenum, and basically a plenum is just that space between the ceiling and the roof, or the floor and the roof. It's the space between the ceiling and the roof or floor above right there. And that's basically where we're going to be putting our air handling tools and our vents and things like that, and our ductwork. So that'll be within the plenum. Also, we'll be using the plenum to create our electrical pathways, especially in commercial, and then some of our plumbing pathways as well, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So this is one of the things, since y'all are all from architecture class, you have a kind of a little bit of a heads up as far as your knowledge of Revit and the building that we created before. So as you remember, the building we created before, we made sure that the ceiling was flush to the floor below it. Here, we're basically going to be creating a drop ceiling. So we're going to keep that space. We're going to create that plenum when we create our building. So that's the difference between what we did last time and this time, is we're keeping that space. Think of it as a drop ceiling, like at Delgado, where you have the acoustical ceiling tiles. There's usually about 1.5 feet to 2 feet below the actual roof floor above itself. That's what we're looking to create. Excuse me, guys. All right, this is more what we're getting into here. We're going to start creating stuff that looks like this. So we're going to create a 2-story building. It's based on the same final project from last time, but I have 2 new floor plans for you, and they're going to be done in the MEP file. So you're going to start by creating that with the plenum space. And since it's such a big building, when we start laying out these pathways and these duct systems, we're going to look at different ways that we can do it. Obviously, it's very straightforward. There's a 1-way duct and a 2-way duct, and we'll talk about how we create that a little bit later. We go on to some of this other one. You can see how we have more information here. We're going to be looking at basically this, the air handler, the duct work, and then also these other ducts with some vent work after. But this gives you a more thorough breakdown of what it's going to look like. So this is a pretty nice graphic. Here we have some more. These are really just kind of good to look at and refer back to when you're trying to figure out how to lay out your ducts. Another good example with a compressor on the outside, how that processes. Here we have another version of it. And this is more what we're going to get into right here. You're going to do stuff that kind of looks like this. So we're going to start with our air handlers, and then we're going to break it off into these smaller ducts and how we calculate that. And then also these other like flexible vents, flexible ducts that end up at our vents here. So we'll be doing stuff like this, things that look more like this. And it has return air and also air going in, air going out. So this is what we're moving towards when we start getting into that part of it. Notice how it's split off from here. You've got one long duct that goes this way and then it splits off this other way, but this is what we're going to be getting into. So what do we do before we get to this point right here? Well, there's a lot of calculations that need to take place. So what we'll do next, any questions about that outline, that lecture before we go on to the new stuff? It's pretty straightforward what's in there, hit the highlights of it, but everything's pretty self-explanatory. You're not going to be tested on the different systems or anything like that, but I just wanted you to have that background information. You'll be tested on strictly just how to create this stuff in Revit. So let's talk about the MEP Revit overview and how that works different with MEP as opposed to architecture. So we're going to go to Revit. And let me open up. This should look familiar to y'all. Here's our, excuse me, guys. Here's our typical Revit architectural template. We have our floor plan, everything over here, your typical stuff that you're used to seeing. Well, if we open up, go to File, New, Project, and this time when you start creating, you're going to open a mechanical template and hit OK. You'll notice everything looks the same in architecture. What's different about this is your project browser. Notice in our project browser that's broken down into our different disciplines. So we have our HVAC information that we'll put in here. We have our plumbing section here, and we'll use a different template when we get to electrical. But for this project, we're just going to start with this. We're going to create your new floor plan in mechanical, create your floor plan, your model just as you would from architecture class, just using the mechanical template instead. And this is going to help us when we get into using our systems tab. Systems. Here you see we have all of our information for our systems, our ducts, our air terminal, our flex ducts. And this is the stuff that we're going to be incorporating into the HVAC system. If you go on along here, there's more mechanical equipment. And when we get into the plumbing section, there's plumbing and then also electrical. We'll get to that. So Mod 1 is live. For Mod 1, what I need you to do is create this for next Monday. Honestly, y'all can probably get this knocked out in a day, in no time at all, because all y'all did great in CAD and the previous Revit class, Revit Architecture. So you're just going to follow these 2 floor plans in MEP. The next thing that you're going to do, and this is a part that everybody loves, being facetious, is how to calculate stuff. So in order to make sure that we're getting the right size air conditioning and the right size distribution of airs, there's some calculations that we need to do. We're going to calculate for an HVAC load for this particular lesson. And then for the next lesson, when we come back and meet on Wednesday, we're going to talk about duct load. There'll be a short lecture on Wednesday, but I don't want to overload you with too much work and calculations now. So we're going to do the difference between the two in 2 separate lectures. So you can also find this information under files. I have so much stuff in here. Spring 2022, all your HVAC mechanical information is here. When we open that up, if you have access to calculations now, so open up that file with calculations, and you'll notice that there's how to calculate HVAC load and duct sizing calculations as well. So we're going to do duct sizing calculations next class. If you want to work ahead, you can definitely read that now, before Wednesday, and get an idea how to do it. Everything's laid out very well for you. You just need to sit there and kind of read through it and do it. So let's take a look at it real quick while we're here. Where did I put everything? So we're going to do how to calculate HVAC first. Let me just read the highlights through this and kind of talk you through it. So there's a bunch of, like I mentioned, there's a bunch of different ways to calculate HVAC loads. This one in particular uses a manual J. It's dependent on different types of air conditioning contractors. And this one, it says, is actually the proper method for sizing an HVAC unit. There are other methods. This calculation is commonly performed with complex computer programs which require time, energy, and money. That's why contractors have developed the BTU calculator as a rule of thumb. That way technicians can determine a general estimate while in the field. So you can see that this is just an estimate. We're trying to get as close as possible. And we're just going to do it by hand, just kind of old school, like for you to do those calculations. But this one is not too bad. An accurately sized HVAC unit will ensure that the desired space can reach the right temperature without wasting energy. And this is how we find that perfect number. So it's pretty straightforward if you want to read through this. Let's see. So basically, you want to determine the square footage of the home. What I would suggest that you do for the building that we are working on, since it's actually commercial, is create your floor plans, first and second floor. And then just go to your tag, how to tag the rooms. Oops, let me go back to that real quick. And when we have our room tags, remember that we can set our room tags to have also the area, so we can get the square footage from there. Then you can just add up the square footage. So you have a little shortcut for that. So do that for all the rooms in the hallway to get your area. Or you can measure inside to inside. But we're going to want to have those exact calculations area for the rooms when we start talking about ductwork and things like that. So get them for each individual room. It's very easy. It'll take you all of 5 minutes. Where was I? Go back to here. Another thing to draw to your attention is to make sure to account for the height of the room as well. We're just doing standard 8 feet. For these rooms. If you were going to have a much bigger room with a much vault with a vaulted ceiling or anything like that, there is an additional calculation that we create that would add the volume of, that would get us the volume of the room as well. And we would use that, but we're not going to be using volume right now. We're just going to be using the straight area for this one. Not only is it the area that we have to take into account, but there are other factors, including how many people are in the building, windows in the building, and exterior doors to the home. So you want to use this information here. So we're going to estimate that the number of people in this building will be 200. So we're just going to keep our numbers even. So it would just estimate everything is 200. I'll be sure to add that to the mod information. It didn't put that in yet. So estimate 200 people. So additional information, thinking about the living space, how the living space is being used. Does this home or particular room have heating, producing appliances? How many people regularly occupy the space? This should also inform your HVAC load will be sufficient to heat or cool the intended area. Other things to keep in mind. So the calculation is really straightforward. There's all that to look into, and the calculation is just this amount right here. So calculate the estimated HVAC load for the house with the square feet. So square feet times 25 equals your base BTU, which is British thermal units. And then you do the number of people. So for each person, it'll be an additional 100. So if we did 200, it'd be 200 times 100. And that would give you 200. This is why I don't do math. Yeah, 12 windows, count the number of windows times 1,000. And then the doors, I think we only have one door on that. That would be 1,002. And then complete this calculation, and this will give you the BTUs. Once you have the BTUs, that's what we use to calculate our duct sizes from there. And then we'll go from there. So this should be done for each floor. We're going to have different units for each floor. One for the first floor and one for the second floor. Any questions? So I haven't worked through this calculation yet either, so it'll be interesting to see what we come back with on Wednesday. So just work through this and let's compare numbers on Wednesday. Let's see if there's anything else on here. All right, and we'll talk about duct sizes next class. The information is there for you to read ahead or whatever, but that's enough work to do for now just to get started working on your floor plan. Working on your floor plan and how to calculate your HVAC load. And then we'll come back Wednesday and talk about ducts.
Ms. Martin, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Sorry, I have a quick question. So just to confirm, and I'm pretty sure I understood this correctly, but when we start that Revit file, we're creating the floor plan in the MEP space, correct? So
I'm sorry, I missed that.
no, so we're creating the floor plan in that MEP space right there. We don't create it somewhere else and then drag it into that.
There's different ways that we can do that, and there's different rules of thumb. We can't import our original into an MEP file. We can do that, and we're going to do that a little bit later on to show you a different option how to do that. But to kick this off, I want you to create this floor plan in MEP. So yes, you're going to go to File,
Yep,
New, Projects, and you're going to start with
the
mechanical template. Yeah.
And do you care what we do, what we build our walls with? I mean, do you care what kind of walls, on the exterior walls, interior walls?
No, no. I think everything is laid out as far as measurements and stuff. Let me open that up real quick.
Yeah, I saw the measurements are all there, but I don't think I saw, like, is it a 6-inch exterior wall and a 4-inch interior wall, or?
Yeah, I'm not that worried about it for this one because that's not really what we're looking at. If you want to make this all CMU, you can do that. You know, it's up to you how much you want to play with it. But yeah, you can just have this like a CMU wall and just have this a generic wall. So I'm not worried about the materials on this. Like
It
I
almost
was,
looks like a 1 foot cinder block wall, right? Is
it
that
is,
correct?
it is, it's like 1 foot. It's exactly what it is, just easy dimensions. And just so, yeah, good question, because we were very specific about that in the last class, but in this class, yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not worried about how you make the walls or anything like that, just as long as the dimensions are correct.
And you want the exact same number of windows and exact same number of doors. No,
Yes.
don't add anything else.
Don't add anything else, because I want to keep everything consistent with your the calculations.
Okay, cool.
So we're all on the same page with the calculations, so we'll just have everything the same with this. Yeah, once again, still forgot to put the door there. So add that door. But yeah, don't embellish this too much, because I'm not looking at your grade for the building itself. You can just make a concrete box as far as I'm concerned. What I'm looking at is having you work it, get that knocked out, and having everybody work in the same floor plan, so we can have the same calculations, which is the important thing that we need to work on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Good question. Anything else, guys? All right.
No, ma'am.
Great. I'll get this recording up. It's going to be in the same YouTube, what is it, file station, whatever it is. Same YouTube place.
Same
I'll send a
channel.
new channel. Thank you. Same YouTube channel, but it'll be marked specifically for MEP stuff. So I'll send you the link, and you can just kind of follow that. If that becomes too cumbersome, I can start another MEP channel. Just let me know. But you should be able to, you'll be able to figure that out. There's not going to be that much to post in there. We're just going to have these shorter lectures, and then it's going to be just a lot of work on your part to get everything knocked out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back Wednesday and seeing how everybody comes up with those calculations for the HVAC load. I hope we all come up with the same ones, and that includes me. That's it for me for now. If there's nothing else, we can go ahead and drop